Okay, I want you to put on your skeptical CFO hat with me for a second. Picture this. It's the end of the quarter, you're staring at your screens, and right there is a massive, completely unexpected utility bill for your company's AI usage. The numbers just do not make sense. Procurement is totally caught off guard, and those massive cost savings everyone promised you, yeah, they are absolutely nowhere to be found on the balance sheet. Well, welcome to the new reality of enterprise tech. Today, we're diving into a brilliant series of articles by Robert Drain of Clutis Partners called From No to No. In this explainer, we're essentially conducting a financial investigation. We're going to figure out exactly why AI is completely breaking our traditional budgets, and more importantly, how we can actually rein it in and govern it. So here is the structured audit we're going to run through today. We've got Section 1, the unseen utility bill. Section 2, the feels-free illusion. Section 3, the phantom savings trap. Section 4, moving from no to no. And finally, Section 5, the missing AI gateway. Let's get right into it. All right, Section 1, the unseen utility bill. This right here is the first major shock to our financial systems. See, for the last 30 years or so, enterprise software had a really predictable economic model. You'd negotiate a license, you'd pay a fixed annual fee, and you knew exactly what your ceiling was. Procurement modeled it, finance budgeted it, everyone slept soundly. But AI? AI works completely differently. It operates much more like electricity. We aren't paying for access anymore, we're paying for every single unit consumed. And the scariest part for a CFO? There is no natural ceiling. The meter just runs, continuously, whether we're actually watching it or not. And this is exactly why the AI adoption curve is so incredibly dangerous for our balance sheets. When normal software goes live, usage eventually stabilizes, right? Well, AI doesn't stabilize, it accelerates. And here is the compounding problem. As our employees get better and better at using AI, their queries become much more complex. So we start out with simple prompts, which are cheap. But then users learn to run complex queries, and eventually they start chaining together these multi-step agents. So the cost per interaction just skyrockets. We aren't just paying for more interactions overall, we're paying for progressively more expensive interactions. The curve just steepens wildly. So you might be wondering, how exactly are these massive costs accumulating entirely under the radar? That brings us to Section 2, the feels-free illusion. The source material points out what is easily the most deceptive interface in enterprise technology today. Think about tools like Copilot in Teams or Einstein in Salesforce. There's no incremental cost at the point of activation, no approval gate you have to click through. A user just opens a chat window, they type, and the AI answers. So, to the individual employee, it feels completely 100% free. But our organizations, we're quietly paying the tab in the background from a pooled token budget. And human nature being what it is, when something feels free, we completely remove cost from our decision to use it. And because it feels free, we start seeing massive behavioral waste. Now, this isn't malicious. It's literally just how humans respond to zero pricing signals. This waste generally takes 4 distinct forms. First up, casual overuse. Think using AI to format a quick email that would have taken you 30 seconds to just write manually. Second is experimental sprawl. This is staff just kind of playing around, basically funding their personal AI education on company tokens. Third, repetitive, inefficient prompting. Burning through tokens on slight variations because the user didn't write one good, solid prompt. And fourth, high consumption outliers. This is a tiny fraction of power users who end up draining the centralized token pool all by themselves. Every single one of these actions is a tiny, invisible financial leak. Now, the crucial point here is how this actually scales up. Drain calls this the drip cost danger. Let's visualize a mid-sized organization, say about 500 staff. If just 20% of them use AI tools daily, averaging, let's say, 25 prompts a day, you are suddenly looking at 75,000 prompts every single month. There is no procurement event for this. There's no approval workflow. Literally, fractions of a cent are multiplying across hundreds of staff and dozens of use cases until, bam, it becomes a massive, unbudgeted $400,000 annual line item. The drip is very real, it is totally invisible, and it is compounding right now as we speak. All right, now for the most frustrating part of this entire audit. Section 3, the phantom savings trap. It is time to aggressively interrogate those promised returns on investment. Where is the saving? Honestly, this is the ultimate exasperated question being asked in boardrooms everywhere right now. Every single AI business case starts with the exact same claim. This will save X hours per week across Y staff. So the platform gets approved, the adoption climbs, but then the CFO looks at the invoice, looks at the department budgets, and realizes absolutely nothing has changed. Those saved hours, they were simply absorbed into the next task. The headcount stayed totally flat. The promised savings were projected, sure, but they were never actually proven. To really understand why these business cases just collapse under scrutiny, we have to separate hard ROI from soft ROI. Hard ROI is measurable, it's attributable, and it actually appears on a budget line. Things like eliminated process costs or avoided agency hours. Soft ROI, on the other hand, includes things like better decisions and reduced employee burnout. Now, soft ROI is incredibly valuable, absolutely, but it is indirect. What usually happens is a sort of soft ROI substitution. When the hard savings fail to actually materialize, the business case quietly pivots to claiming soft benefits. But we all know that is not what was promised to finance in the first place. Which brings us to a very hard truth. Drain defines this as the phantom savings rule. Recovered hours only count as hard ROI if they change a budget line or a hiring plan. If the saving doesn't literally appear somewhere in the organization's cost structure, like a deferred hire or a significantly lower agency invoice, it is not hard ROI, period. It sounds a bit harsh, I know, but it is literally the only rule that protects your AI investments from being totally dismantled by executive scrutiny. Okay, so how do we actually fix this mess? Let's pivot to a systemic governance solution in Section 4, moving from no to no. The gut instinct for most finance and IT leaders when they see runaway costs is to just respond by saying, no, right? Cap the usage, restrict the tools, shut it down. But saying no just drives shadow AI. Employees will literally just drop sensitive corporate data into unsanctioned, unmonitored consumer endpoints to get their work done. Instead, we have to shift our mindset to no. We need total visibility before cost attribution even begins. We have to know what it costs, know exactly what it delivers, and know the moment the meter starts running. To actually make that move to no, here is the CFO's ultimate checklist. Before any AI use case is allowed to go live, it absolutely must have these 5 non-negotiable requirements. 1. A specific metric. Think something like documentation time per visit. 2. A baseline of the current state. If you don't have this, savings can't be proven later. 3. A real measurement method. We're talking system logs here, not fuzzy estimates. 4. A time horizon for exactly when the measurement will be taken. And 5. A named owner. One specific person who is accountable for reporting that metric. There is always a metric, folks. We just have to define it before we hit deploy. So we have the framework, but what about the actual tech infrastructure required to enforce it automatically? That's Section 5, the missing AI gateway. Let me hit you with a game-changing realization from the source text. Dashboards are just mirrors. They only tell you that a business unit already burned through 3 times its token allowance last month. They are fundamentally reactive. A dashboard does not stop an employee from pasting a client's highly sensitive medical history into an unapproved model at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. To actually prevent that, governance has to intervene before the prompt ever leaves the organization. What we desperately need is a true, proactive enterprise AI gateway. See, current gateways mostly just apply really basic rules and match patterns. The next generation has to apply actual reasoning. It needs 4 critical capabilities. First, it has to understand context, meaning it can recognize deeply personal information even if it doesn't look like standard PII formatting. Second, it has to understand intent. It needs to differentiate a legitimate clinical query from someone just messing around with an unverified endpoint. Third, it must dynamically select the most appropriate approved model for that specific task based on data classification. And fourth, it has to produce real governance telemetry, logging not just how many tokens were used, but why they were used and against which governed use case. And that brings us to the most crucial missing piece of the architecture, the 5th dimension, persistent organizational memory. A true reasoning gateway needs to remember the context surrounding a prompt. It needs to know, oh, hey, this user asked a really similar question yesterday, or this specific workflow was already approved for sensitive data 10 minutes ago. This is what transforms the gateway from just a simple dumb filter into a true organizational intelligence layer. Now, no one has built this perfectly just yet, but make no mistake, this is exactly where enterprise architecture is heading. Because enterprise AI gateways are not optional. History literally proves it. Think about it. When organizations first connected to the internet, firewalls became mandatory. When we adopted the cloud, identity providers became mandatory. And it wasn't because regulators told us to. It was because the alternative was completely indefensible. AI is the exact same story. Enterprise AI gateways will become a mandatory evolution for any organization trying to run AI at scale. If we don't prepare for this right now, we are going to be stuck retrofitting governance onto a massive, messy financial dependency later. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. AI is a utility. The chat interfaces feel free to the user, but the costs are compounding quietly in the background every single second. The promised savings? They're mostly phantoms unless you actively tie them to a strict budget line. The meter is running, the gateway is coming, but right now, today, is anyone in your organization actually watching the meter? I highly recommend auditing your own systems immediately. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.